ing boardrooms at dusk, confessions by market open. My name is Daniel, and I keep men from gambling with other men's retirements by reminding them the market is not sentimental. I'm an overnight analyst at a global bank, the kind of tower where glass pretends to be forgiveness and elevators sound like apologies rehearsed too late. On paper, I monitor futures, flag anomalies, update risk dashboards so a vice president can nod at sunrise. In practice, I translate appetite. Traders want velocity without consequence. Compliance wants language that sounds like restraint. The city wants to believe that money behaves like physics. I carry a badge that opens doors I shouldn't, a fountain pen that outlived 2 layoffs, and a notebook where I scribble numbers the way monks used to carve prayers. I live with Mark. He's a sculptor who welds scrap into mercy and kisses like he's always measuring whether you fit in his arms the way bronze fits a mold. We taped a rule on an index card to the fridge under a magnet shaped like a bull. Say it by market open. 09:30 is our bell. We learned the hard way that midnight honesty becomes theater and after-hours trades of the soul clear badly. The Wednesday the Bloomberg behaved and I didn't. Volatility had camped in Asia and was threatening to fly business class to New York. At 01:12 the yen sneezed. At 02:44 a commodities desk in London emailed questions they didn't mean. At 03:30 my screens blinked a constellation that said someone somewhere had just mistaken hubris for a hedge. At 04:07 my phone buzzed with the joint email Mark and I use for deliveries and the nouns were too tired to carry alone. Thank you for your stay, the Halcyon. Time, 12:083:02. Points, 200 added. Market open stirred in my chest like a regulator waiting to ask me if I had a license for my mouth. I didn't call him. Our second rule is for everything not yet a catastrophe, 2 loops around the trading floor before nomming it. I walked past empty chairs still warm with ambition, past whiteboards scrawled with equations that pretended to be scripture, past the pantry where a row of cold brew taps stood like confessions. The fluorescent hum said the sentence spreadsheets prefer. You already know. He found me near the glass wall overlooking the river, a reflection that introduced itself before he spoke. Vale, he said, surname like a verdict, then softer. Julian, reputation strategy. He'd been hired by the bank to guide narratives through a storm of regulatory chatter, which is how money asks someone to sell apologies wholesale. He wore midnight navy, smiled like a man who keeps confessions on retainer. He stood too close to the risk board, hands in pockets, and watched the lines climb. You're Daniel, he said, not asking. You keep panic from reading itself out loud. I keep panic from thinking it's poetry, I answered, clicking refresh with a finger that knew more secrets than a priest. He smiled, a small dividend. Drink when you hand the market to daylight. The Halcyon bar forgives in stronger currencies. Mark texted a photo of a half-welded figure in his studio, sparks froze in midair like punctuation. She's almost standing. I'm not sure she'll stay. Market open. I sent a heart and a bronze emoji. Imagine the Halcyon's lamps rehearsing contrition. The Halcyon bar is designed to launder sins into networking. Julian sat where the lighting taught cheekbones ambition. He asked what it feels like to hold other people's hunger in a chart. I told him it feels like pressing a hand to a chest and praying the breath doesn't stop while you check the math. He touched the back of my hand with 2 fingers, the pulse point, and didn't say here. He let the elevator handle grammar. I said now, because men who survive numbers sometimes want to fail words. His sweet smelled like citrus and managed remorse. He kissed like a man who had been congratulated on restraint and had just remembered appetite. He pressed me against the window, skyline blinking indexes like a ticker tape of forgiveness. He was generous where biography trains men to be, and selfish where mouths prefer accuracy to ethics. I put my hands where agreements live. We left the lamp on because daylight had been written into the terms between lobby and lift. After he lay on his back and studied the sprinkler like a shareholder vote. "You'll forgive him," he said, meaning Mark, meaning the man who welds permanence out of scraps. "I'll speak by market open," I said. He smiled like a clause had been added to his prospectus. Mark was brewing coffee when I came in, forearms streaked with bronze dust like currency that had tried to escape. At 09:29 we stood under the bull magnet and I said nouns. Hotel, elevator, mouth, hands, yes. I didn't pad them with modifiers. He listened like a man who knows metal will break if you rush its cooling. "Do you love him?" he asked, not a gavel, just a chisel. "I loved the hour when nothing needed me to be rational," I said. He nodded, picked up the marker, and wrote under our rule in sculptor's print. "No rooms we can't name at this table. If something breaks, we break it before closing bell together." He underlined together, capped the pen, and kissed my neck like he was fixing a joint. Julian treated nights like chapters. He lingered near the boardroom glass with a consultant's humility and a gambler's appetite. He sent me a photo of dawn on the river with the caption "proof," as if light needed an affidavit. He learned 2 interns' names and used them like passwords. He drifted past my desk during a liquidity review and asked if my numbers could be framed as confidence narratives. I told him nouns don't enjoy being made into slogans. The gossip vertical that thrives on bankers' blood posted a grainy halcyon elevator still, my shoulder his mouth, a caption that tried to pun on leverage. Mark didn't forward it. He printed it, taped it inside the cabinet where we keep coffee, and took it down at market open, replacing it with a grocery list. This is how he archives. Nothing heavy where daily hands reach. Props auditioned as if the city were producing our story. The halcyon called to say housekeeping had found a ring beneath an armchair in a room tied to my loyalty account. Narrow gold, engraved J+D inside like arithmetic that believed in marriage. Not mine. The clerk asked if I wanted to claim it. "Hold for owner," I said, using the voice that tells traders their options expired last night. Work tried to rescue me with honest panic. A derivatives desk tripped alarms. A sovereign bond whispered contagion. A junior wrote "oh fuck" into a Slack that legal would screenshot. I wrote a summary with verbs only, no adjectives. Julian texted, "You're very good when the room is afraid." I typed, "I prefer accurate," and closed the draft. Then the little red badge appeared where red should not. A feed from compliance flagged anomalous connections. I dug. Logs told me a conference room terminal had been chatting at 03:00 with an address that lived behind a vendor's VPN. We pulled the machine, popped the bezel, and found it taped underneath. A thumb-sized recorder, cheap and patient, its tiny light a private admission. It had been collecting the soft parts, hallway whispers about margin calls, analysts rehearsing excuses, the way panic breathes before it edits itself. The sticker on its battery pack belonged to a strategic communications firm the bank had hired for stakeholder alignment. Julian had name-dropped their founder between olives and whiskey. I peeled it off with a plastic scraper, gloved because rumor stains. Legal wrote a memo with regrettable 4 times and consent twice. We printed signs in serif fonts that pretend to be polite, recording prohibited without authorization. We added sweeps before meetings. Traders joked, then went quiet. The recorder became a policy, became a decal, became a scar. I told Mark at market open. He set his hammer down, leaned until leaning meant faith, and asked, Are we trying to be interesting, Daniel, or are we trying to be us? He asks it like a weld cooling. Don't touch until you decide. Us, I said, and the floor under me remembered to hold. Julian tried to stage a finale. He waited for me outside the lobby in a rain that looked hired. He held the ring between two fingers, J plus D glittering like hubris, and said, "Say my name." He meant Julian, and also the thing men mean when they ask to be named. Give me jurisdiction in your story. Julian, I said, and then added, exit. His smile learned gravity. He pocketed the ring like a receipt and called me precise. I told him I prefer accurate. He laughed like he'd been charged a fee he couldn't dispute, and stepped into a car that wanted an alibi. If you came for erotics notarized, there was a wall and a yes and hands where we said they'd be, a mouth that believed in the moment more than the man. The lamp stayed on because daylight had been added to the contract. We didn't ask it to testify. It was heat without metaphor, an hour where bodies edited numbers out of existence. If you came for intrigue plated, a ring with arithmetic on its inside curve, a recorder with ambitions taped beneath a table that should have hosted only minutes, an elevator camera that thinks it works for the style section, a consultant who mistakes hunger for loyalty. If you came for redemption, markets don't sell it. They sell open and close. The ring's other initial claimed its owner. Carter. There is always a Carter, arrived at the Halcyon with a lawyer who looked like amortization and retrieved the band as if fixing an error in a spreadsheet. He nodded at me in the lobby with a face that said, "Thank you for not making this theater." I nodded back, the way analysts do when data aligns. Mark and I practiced boring until it remembered how to be a craft. One night he pressed his hand to my throat with the gentleness of a man who has only ever used force for form and asked, "Here." I said, "Now," because consent prefers clocks over poetry. After, he laughed into my shoulder like bronze cooling. We ate toast with too much butter and no apologies. The lamp stayed on. Work stayed work. A sovereign hiccuped, an index pretended to be prophecy. A reporter asked a question we all agreed not to hear. I wrote a note to myself in my monk's notebook. Precision flatters, accuracy saves. Sometimes at 03:00 I stand at the glass and look down at the river that forgets every trade. The dashboards breathe. The city hums. I think of my father teaching me to double-check sums by hand, how he said the second pass is respect, not paranoia. I think of the index card on our fridge and how paper needs breath. I think of the ring that thought initials could be legislation. We added a line because rules like company. In Mark's weld straight capitals, if you burn something, do it where I can help find water. We didn't laminate it. Laminating is what you do to lies you plan to reuse. The bull magnet holds. Julian will find another bank to haunt, another elevator to rehearse sincerity in, another ring to engrave arithmetic that flatters. I will keep a badge, a pen, and the habit of being precise only after accuracy is paid in full. For a few hours at a time, I hold panic until daylight can invoice it. For a few hours at a time, I refuse to make my mouth available to rented stories. Then I go home if the river allows it, stand under a brass bull with a man who knows how to weld permanence and say the thing. We leave the lamp on or off as needed. And when the market bell rings, I breathe, align my sums and tell numbers gently to behave.